Pterodactyl 64, bringing you the 4th episode for the demo of Love, Money, Rock and Roll. Last time has definitely gotten a lot more intriguing with additional threats and some sort of conspiracy involving Nikolai's father. We don't really know what that's going to amount to yet. I honestly can't even remember if we're in the 3rd or 4th day of the demo. I've sort of lost track since the day we're on now. He sort of woke up at noon and hasn't even gone to school. But things have continued to get more and more intriguing, so let's start right from where we left off and find out what happens next. I decided to go to my favorite bar for lunch, even if it was the site of yesterday's unfortunate incident. The bell above the door made a pleasant chiming sound as I entered, but none of the handful of patrons present looked my way. Only the bartender gave me the customary smile and waved at me. "Hey, Nick, we've been seeing a lot of you lately. Not that I'm not happy, but after yesterday." I stopped in front of the bar, not knowing what to say. No, my resentment towards him had already passed. After all, people had their own lives and jobs to worry about. Will it be the usual? No, I've come for a lunch. Got it. And what would you like? Don't know. Give me a steak, I guess. It shall be done. The bartender managed to imitate the Japanese way of addressing guests to a near perfection, but he twisted it in his own peculiar way, such that he ended up sounding more like an overly gregarious host of a medieval tavern. I sat down at the table and sank into thought. The steak turned out well, as expected. The food here was as good as the beer. I was lazily picking my teeth with a toothpick when the sonorous, pleasant sound of the door chimes was heard again, signaling the arrival of a new visitor. Oh, this guy. Standing in the doorway was Michael. Here was one person I had never expected to see here. Though, why not? He noticed me and came to sit at my table. A split second later, the bartender stood by us and was placing the menu in front of Michael. "A friend of yours, Nikolai?" he asked in Russian, hideously drawing out my name in a French manner. "Something like that, yes, a classmate," I replied in Japanese. "What does the sir desire?" I couldn't decide whether I was more irritated or amused by his performance. "Just coffee." "Right away," chimed the bartender before taking off. "Is school over?" "It is, and you didn't show up." "Yeah, I had some business to take care of, shall we say." I had known Michael for 2.5 years. He was from the States, and his parents had also been working in Japan for a while. We had never been particularly close, but his seriousness and an uncommonly mature attitude towards life commanded a certain respect. You could say he was the mirror opposite of Kyosuke. I take it you don't want to go into the details. Not especially. Some guys at school have been bragging that they thrashed someone yesterday. And? I snarled back, irritated. It was hard to tell with Michael if he was hinting at me or just sharing school gossip. "You haven't heard anything about that?" "No." "I see." He kept sipping his coffee, gazing somewhere past me. As uncommunicative as I could be at times, Michael was something else. Did he really feel comfortable at that moment? "So, what's going on at school?" "The usual." "And how's Catherine?" The question slipped off my tongue of its own accord. I hadn't even thought about her until that moment. Michael set down his cup and stared at me intently. "Don't know. We're not acquainted, remember?" "Oh, right. Back then we were in different classes." He kept giving me a weird look. "What? Was there something between the two of you?" "I bet you've already heard everything from Kyosuke." "But I'm asking you at the moment." "Okay, yes, there was something, but that was a long time ago." "And now?" "And now, there's nothing." "I see. Are you curious because the two of you are from the same country?" "I'm just wondering, why did she enroll at this particular school?" "I don't know. You'll have to ask her." By now, I was sick of this question, even if typically I was the one posing it to myself. "Have you thought that maybe there's a reason behind it?" "What difference does it make what I have or haven't thought? You don't know Catherine. Thinking is wasted on her." "Sorry, I didn't mean to upset you." "This has nothing to do with you. I just have bigger things to worry about." Michael kept his voice so calm and level the entire time that it was beginning to annoy me. If he didn't actually care, why ask all these questions? Anyway, this is not the most pleasant of subjects. "Sorry, I didn't realize that the two of you still..." He coughed pointedly, that it was an unpleasant topic for you. Yet he could have guessed. Imagine that! I felt like tossing some bills on the table and walking out, but I had few friends as it was, while this kind of behavior was, on the whole, typical of Michael. "Did anyone ask about me at school?" "I haven't heard anything." I see. And how are things with you, anyway? Not bad, except that I have no free time at all. I'm preparing for college admission. College admission. I stretched the words. And where do you have in mind? Most likely, go back to the States. What? Tired of this place? I smirked. It's just that higher education is better there. Michael calmly responded. His words touched a nerve. Unlike him, I had little choice. And even if I wanted to, the best I could hope for with my grapes was a minimum wage job. Our conversation had not gelled from the get-go. Well, I think I'll be heading out. See you tomorrow at school. See you, he said in the same constant tone. I waved goodbye to the bartender and exited. Had the bar been a courtroom, Michael would have fit the part of the prosecutor to perfection. Stern, cold, dispassionate, operating only with facts. And what would my chances have been then, seeing how I flew off the handle at the drop of a hat? Ooh, new background. I wandered aimlessly around the city, passing street after street and neighborhood after neighborhood. I found myself in a part of town where I'd never been before. A curious thing, Tokyo was, of course, much larger than my hometown, but back during my childhood, everything looked huge to me. The apartment, the yard, the kindergarten building, the store across the street. So my mind could comfortably draw comparisons between that tiny patch of childhood space and the multi-million megapolis. I suppose I had always been at ease in a crowd of the perpetually rushing strangers. Sometimes I walked in the same direction as they, as though in lockstep, and other times I walked against the flow. The crowds paid me no attention, accepting me as one of their own, and thank goodness for that. Perhaps because of this ability of mine, I now noticed that someone was following me. Ooh, suspenseful music. Sure, it's often the case that a stranger happens to be going the same way as you. One turn, two, a crossing, no problem. But when you're just wandering around and someone is following you like a shadow, then you clearly know there's no coincidence. I quickened my pace, crossed on red, turned into an alley, and walked briskly through it. Two possibilities were emerging: either I was being paranoid, or I had managed to shake off my tail. I pretended to be checking out a TV behind the window of an electronics store. At least 5 minutes had passed, but the mysterious pursuer did not show up. It occurred to me that I had finally lost my mind. This called for a sedative. Or a drink. But I hadn't made it up. I was sure that someone had been following me. Who and why, that was another question. Maybe I relaxed too early. Was it worth checking again? I doubt that. Oh, yay, choices. Crap, I have no idea what to choose here. I obviously feel like doing nothing is the safer choice, but with how Nikolai seems to operate, I think it's gonna bug him unless he tries and locates his tail. Anyway, it couldn't hurt to try. I think it could hurt to try. We'll probably see how it will in a moment. And if it was a professional shadowing me, then he wouldn't let me bust him so easily twice in a row. I went into a clothing store and, as quickly as I could, bought a brightly colored windbreaker and a cap after confirming that no one was watching me from the street. If you want to hide something, hide it in plain sight. Principle applied to a crowd as well. I darted into one of the numerous side streets, threw on a jacket and the hat, tucked the shopping bag behind a downspout, and ran to the next street. I stopped around the corner next to a newsstand, drew the cap lower over my face, and kept glancing around me. Sure enough, before long, the now familiar figure appeared in the distance. It made sense. He had taken a parallel side street instead of following on my heels. I made a half turn, hunched my shoulders, and even crouched slightly so as to appear shorter. My pursuer was looking around frantically, having clearly lost sight of me. Yet he passed right by the newsstand without paying any attention to the guy in the flashy windbreaker. I followed him. It does look creepy, and either he's far away or he's very short. The man was middle-aged, dressed in an unseasonably warm trench coat, dark pants, and black shoes. He looked like a typical office worker. He stopped at an intersection, looked around, and sighed loudly. I was literally 2 meters behind him. Oh, there we go, now he's closer. Lost someone? I finally ventured. Huh? He turned sharply and gave me a bewildered stare. No, everything's alright. Just as quickly, the stranger's face took on an impassive expression, and he prepared to leave. Why were you following me? Following you? I wasn't following anyone. He regained his composure in the blink of an eye. I was supposed to meet someone here, but it looks like the person is not going to show up. That someone. Is it me? Young man. He looked me up and down and continued coldly. This is the first time I've seen you. Then why follow someone you see for the first time? I have to go. I didn't try to stop him, that would have been something else. but damn it, things were going from bad to worse. First the notes, then the calls, the mysteries of my family's past, and now someone trailing me. The one thing that brought relief was that I was still alive. A nervous laugh escaped my lips. The schoolgirls passing by exchanged anxious whispers. Enough. It was time to put an end to this. I would call my grandparents the very next day. It was already dark when I found myself in front of a music club, which I occasionally visited to see the local underground bands. If daytime in Tokyo still felt as warm as in the summer, evenings were getting increasingly colder. I wrapped myself more tightly in my denim jacket and shivered. The house was some distance from the club, so it made sense to go inside to warm up. Inside, there was a sizable crowd. Cigarette smoke hung heavy, and the air was saturated with the spicy aromas of beer, sake, whiskey, and goodness knows what else. Frankly, a bender was not on my to-do list for the day, but this was too much to pass by. I got a beer from the bar and squeezed myself closer to the stage. The first band was playing some uncomplicated heavy metal. The Japanese bands playing this kind of music didn't try to reinvent the wheel, content to blindly copy Western masters. Some managed this better than others. The present performers managed so-so, which is why the majority in the audience were occupied with anything and everything except listening to music. The wretched rockers, who couldn't possibly not notice this, got completely disheartened towards the end, trying only to avoid making complete fools of themselves. Then again, who was I to judge? I couldn't play my bass even at their level. The next band was dressed in the 70s style, a sure sign that some old school rock was to follow, so I went off to wander the club. Although I came here from time to time, I had never made any acquaintances. Usually, I just stood around by myself guzzling beer. It was pointless to expect international stars here, and as for the local bands, I cared about them chiefly to the extent that they helped me while away another boring evening. I recalled how I had once brought Catherine here, but she did not like it in the least. Himitsu, in turn, altogether refused to go to concerts for some reason. A young couple was cuddling in the corner. I watched them for a long time and suddenly felt revulsion. No, that won't do, I told myself. This night, at least, I was going to relax. I dashed to the bar, downed 3 shots of whiskey, picked up another beer, and headed back into the crowd, this time at a far less steady gait. The old farts had finished playing, and the stage was now occupied by some glam rockers, tuning their instruments. "Come on, let's get rockin'!" I yelled. Whoa, who's this guy? A guy standing near me glanced my way and said, "We're gonna rock all right, don't you worry." What, are you playing too, or what? Sure am. Then why aren't you on stage? They're all busy tuning. I don't need any tuning. I am always tuned. He adjusted his sunglasses. Why was he wearing them indoors? See you. With this, the guy disappeared into the dressing room. The lights dimmed, and the speakers erupted with the first guitar chords. Hi, everybody! We are Z Feel Z. I have no idea if that's how it's pronounced. No clue. Let's go with it for now. A familiar voice came over the microphone as bright lights beamed down on the rafters. Familiar voice? Shut up! It's Ellie! Standing center stage in a rather unusual outfit was Ellie, guitar in hand. And not just standing, but singing and playing. Now this I was not ready for. I said out loud, but no one could hear me over the thundering music. Yesterday's episode in the old music classroom came right back to me. Had the money driven her bonkers? I could understand a little strumming on the side, but this here. I listened more intently. They did play quite well. No wonder they'd been asked to headline. The crowd clearly took well to the music too. As the first song ended, Ellie shouted, "Thank you!" into the mic and surveyed the audience, lingering on me for a second. Ooh, I like the music. Did she spot me? Judging by the surprise and even a tad of embarrassment painted on her face, she did. So what? Did she really expect that no one was going to find out about her nighttime metamorphosis from an exemplary student and a genteel lady into a queen of the Tokyo glam scene? I chuckled. Have you fallen for her? Where did you come from? That weird kid who played the keyboard for Z Feel Z was standing next to me again. You were just up on stage. She's gonna take some effort. Look, I had no such... We just go to the same school and sort of know each other. Oh, is that so? His eyes flashed from behind his sunglasses. What kind of dumb name is that anyway? Z-Feel... It's pronounced Zed Feels, like the anime robot, you know. I looked at him skeptically. It's to attract fans. If the jam-packed club floor was any indication, Zed Feels did not lack for fans, at least not at this level. The crowd was getting lively in anticipation of the next song. An instant later, the guy I'd been talking to was back on the stage behind his instrument. They were playing some kind of ballad. Ellie kept shooting angry glances my way. But of course, I came here just so I could distract her from her performance. Be that as it may, she did have a nice voice and played well too. Maybe she had a gift, but even so, to get this far with all of her other obligations and responsibilities as a scion of a respected family, time is finite after all. I had no obligations, no responsibilities, and yet all I had learned to play were 2 or 3 songs from tabs. I suddenly felt a surge of respect for Ellie and backed away from the stage so as not to embarrass her further. I backed up against a wall where she could not see me. She doesn't do as well without you. Anger imparts strength. What the devil? You're playing right now, as in this very moment. This very moment, it's a solo. This kid was starting to get to me, so I went back to stand near the stage. Seeing me, Ellie mishit the strings and a metal clanging sound roiled the speakers. Were her fans and servants going to lynch me now? But the girl quickly recovered and carried on playing as though nothing had happened. But once the song was ended, and before the next one began, Ellie furtively shook her finger at me from the stage. Now, that was just ridiculous. How is this my fault? Was she fixated or what? I made a point of not looking at her, training my attention on other members of Zed Feels. The bassist looked fairly ordinary, almost to a fault. Considering the band's style, I would have expected an edgier attire. Nevertheless, he was a much better player than I. How long would it have taken me to be able to play his parts as cleanly as he had done? I couldn't make out the drummer's features behind his equipment, and unfortunately I had already met the keyboardist. This turned out to be their last song. The audience was demanding an encore, but the band quickly disappeared off stage. Maybe they didn't have a very large repertoire. And what was I going to do next? On one hand, I wanted to talk to Ellie and tell her that I liked her music. On the other hand, wouldn't that sound like a trite compliment? Besides, she was clearly not happy to see me at her concert. While I contemplated, the crowd began to disperse, and still, Z-Feels had not emerged from the dressing room. They must have left through the back door. Oh well, I didn't have much to say to her anyway. Still, I was grateful for Ellie. Her music had allowed me to escape my problems, if only briefly. The club was almost empty now, but I remained frozen in the middle of the dance floor, immersed in my own thoughts. Usually I left before the end of a concert, feeling uplifted, instead of waiting for the bitter aftertaste of the fun's conclusion. Either it had gotten warmer outside, or the alcohol was warming me up. Somehow, I made it to the house in no time at all. Is he going to his house? Okay, I don't know why I thought he was going to see his grandparents that night while drunk. Another note from Himitsu was resting on the doorstep. Surely, this time she could have let herself in with her key since I hadn't bolted the door from the inside. She could have made dinner and waited for me, as she had done the day before. I think this guy is a little bit selfish. However, the note made it clear that I couldn't even begin to count on it. What, did she think that I was just amusing myself? The note, the mysteries, the man shadowing me. Just because I couldn't tell her about all this stuff didn't mean I didn't want to. So I'd gone to a concert. What of it? A man had to enjoy some culture once in a while. Of course, none of this was Himitsu's fault. I was just weary of her incessant, misplaced worrying. Of late, I felt myself caged up when I was with her more and more often. As children grow, they gain independence, but in my case, Himitsu had essentially replaced my deceased parents, and little had actually changed in my life. But to take all this for granted, did I really feel no gratitude towards her? Judging by the note, she was not just upset, but also hurt. Perhaps I could at least call her. I didn't need to give any details, just tell her that everything was okay. I could, of course, stop by her place, but it was already late, I reeked of alcohol, and the call would be sufficient for the occasion. I dialed the phone number familiar to me from childhood. Almost immediately, her voice came over the line. Hello? Nico-kun? Just about what I expected. Hi, sorry I disappeared today. Silence at the other end. You're not going to believe me if I tell you I had things to do, are you? Did you? I sighed heavily. I am hurt that you are hiding something from me. Even if I am, there are good reasons for it. But I'm not hiding anything. Haha. Wow. The inane laugh was meant to diffuse the situation. You know that I'm always here for you if anything happens. Okay, I'll see you at school tomorrow. Good night. Good night. I hung up and paused to think. What if I told her everything? I highly doubted that Himitsu could help me in any way, but at least I wouldn't have to shoulder my problems alone. I was gazing at the phone and was just about to head to bed when it rang. Himitsu again? Forgot to say something? I don't think it's her. Yeah, hi. I started out automatically. Seriously, who else was going to call me at this hour? Who else was going to call me, period? Nikolai-kun. However, I was wrong. The speaker was Ichinose-san. Ichinose-san? I'm listening. Nikolai-kun, I considered for a long time whether to call you. After all, I told you myself this morning to keep out of this business. But I owe much to your father, you see, and since he's no longer with us, the least I can do is repay the debt to his son. I simply didn't know what to say. Are you listening to me? Yeah, absolutely. I'm all ears. I don't know all that much myself, nor did your father, I suspect. But there is a person. Write this down. No, better, memorize it. The name is Akira Shinji. He used to work with your father and me, but he got laid off. He now owns a little restaurant somewhere on the waterfront. Ichinose fell silent for a moment, but then continued hastily. Nikolai, I don't know if you're in any danger, but please be careful. Ichinose-san, which waterfront exactly? Tokyo has lots. That name is pretty common, too. I can't. I have to go. Take care of yourself. He hung up. He was clearly afraid of something. Afraid, yes, yet he called and warned me, and even gave me a clue. Though Akira Shinji was like Ivan Ivanov or John Smith. For some reason, I felt no fear at that moment, more like reckless excitement and boldness. Probably owing to the quantity of alcohol consumed earlier. Literally the moment I got off the call with Ichinose, I felt incredibly sleepy. I barely made it to my bed before crashing. I woke up early, filled with a headache, the dry horrors, and a terrible feeling of the meaninglessness of existence. Good thing I always had aspirin in the med kit, although it's the only thing there was in the first place. Not gonna lie, that kind of sounds like a good ad for aspirin. I feel like that whole sentence beforehand would be a very good ad for headache medicine in general. A weird ad, but pretty effective ad. After washing the pill down with a couple glasses of cold water, I figured that yesterday didn't really end too badly. At least today I didn't slug it in the bed all the way to lunchtime. The memories started to return slowly. Vicious and heavy, they were surfacing in my mind, bringing with themselves an extorting unease. I suddenly felt uncomfortable alone in this giant empty house. I certainly needed to go to school. Or at this rate, I could really get myself expelled. It wasn't about my attendance, of course. I just desperately wanted to be among other people. I guess I get that. I stepped out onto the street, and the chilly air immediately drew away the last remains of the hangover. It was still too early, even for Himitsu. Oh well, we talked yesterday. Getting up before Himitsu, that is pretty damn early. Although the early part seemed to only apply to me, the life in Tokyo was already in full swing. The clerks were on their way to work, clad in identical snow-white shirts. The grocery stores and all kinds of shops were opening up. The cheerful old women were drawingly striking conversations with each other. I was walking down the street, enjoying life. Until that moment, I never even noticed that small things like these made the world a much more attractive place than I ever thought it to be. Could anything really go wrong? The fear for my own safety, even my own life, made me realize I wasn't ready to change anything yet. Just up and return to the USSR? No, that's foolish. That's the voice of the drunk juvenile radicalism. But what was I supposed to do then? Fight here and now? Or just go with the flow? After all, a life as wonderful as this couldn't possibly be senselessly cruel at the same time, could it? The world turned its friendly, smiling face to me, and my stomach responded with as friendly a rumble. And to think that at the start of the morning, even a thought of food had been making me want to puke. He's not gonna go to the bar, is he? I would hope it wouldn't even be open this time of day. I entered a small restaurant and delightedly ate a bowl of ramen. All my worries faded into the background, and hope glimmered in the distance. I was just getting all worked up while nothing scary was really going on. For a year and a half, I was living as if in an anabiosis. So now, every little thing seemed like a problem of galactic proportions. If something would have really happened to me, for example, if I received a visit from the police in my house, I'd have surely gotten a heart attack. I just needed to calm down, wait it out, and all the troubles would solve themselves. And if not, I'd work on them as they come up. Not the worst attitude. Surprised how having a hangover would bring on this kind of revelation. When approaching the school, I was carried along by a crowd of students. I had spent a good half an hour in the ramen shop, and it wasn't as early in the morning by then. Japanese, Americans, French, Russians. Sometimes it seemed to me that my school was a bit too international. It was a good thing, though. I didn't feel as alien among them as, for instance, sitting at the narrow counter on a low chair in a typical Japanese snack bar. Several guys shook my hand on the run. Some girl even flashed me a smile. I recalled being in the same class as the girl last year, but wouldn't be able to remember her name even if my life depended on it. I was close to saying I was happy, but there she is. The second you mentioned being happy, of course Catherine's going to appear. At the lockers, I ran into Catherine. Hi. You're early today. She gave me an unexpectedly polite response. Yeah, I skipped yesterday. Can't keep ditching school forever. Decided to get yourself together, really? Catherine looked at me wide-eyed, then frowned. Oh, I see. She had that smile on her lips again. That's a smile? Her face is kind of like a mix between creepy and angry. I ignored it and said simply, yeah, so much has happened lately. I may have been feeling fine, but couldn't hide my swollen face. Especially not from Catherine. Well, so enough already. What are you staring at me for? You know it all. Emotions changed quickly on Catherine's face. The surprise gave place to indifference. She lost interest. That's not what or maybe that too. I don't want to fight anymore. I just think you have to understand my reaction. Put yourself in my shoes or something. What are you even talking about? Oh my god, this girl is pissing me off now. Catherine asked imperturbably. I have no idea how to pronounce that. About everything. Don't pretend you don't understand. Don't understand what? I didn't even know how to talk to her anymore. Alright, you want me to understand you? I do now. Is it like she just turns on a switch? Oh, here we go again. Is that your way of mocking me? Why would I be mocking you? Well, that's a question I should be asking you. First you come back without reason. Then you transfer into my class and pretend like that's how it should be. Show me at least a morsel of respect. What should I respect you for? Ouch! I couldn't hear Catherine. I'd already forgotten to even think about yesterday's events, about the morning contemplations. Or just don't talk to me anymore. I'm tired of degrading myself before you, struggling to get at least some kind of humane treatment from you. It looked like she wasn't ready for this kind of reaction. So, make your choice. I turned around and ran up the stairs to the second floor. Half expecting him to punch a wall or something. Oh, hey Nick, where have you been? Kyosuke was as carefree as always. Been drinking, I snarled. I see, you're not in the mood. Talk to you later then, he responded sadly. Aw, poor Kyosuke. Catherine entered the class almost immediately after me. There were several minutes still left until the bell, and they dragged on tormentingly slow. It'll be easier during the lesson. It'll be easier. I was consoling myself. Meanwhile, Catherine wasn't paying any attention to me at all. No, this was crossing the line now. It stopped being a mockery and turned into just a crooked behavior. Did she fall down riding a bike in that USA of hers? Into the Grand Canyon. The bell finally rang. During the lesson, I was only thinking about Catherine, a burning, to the point of shudders, desire to turn around and look at her swelling in my chest. I couldn't manage to distract myself with anything. Yesterday's conversation with Ichinose and the mysterious threat hanging over my head seemed to have suddenly lost any meaning. A single thought was pulsating in my head, to sort out my relationship with her once and for all. I'd be figuring out if I still love her or not later, and now I needed to what? God damn it, I can't do this anymore. With a loud thud, I hit my desk with my forehead. Inokin-kun, are you alright? I heard constrained laughs and whispers. Couldn't be better, Sensei. Just checking if there's anything in my head. The teacher didn't even flinch an eyebrow. He's seen much worse working in this school. Perhaps you should go to the doctor. No, I'm telling you, I'm fine. Well, do as you will. Just don't interfere with the lesson. After this circus act, I felt a bit better. Strikingly, the planet kept spinning and paid no attention to my problems. The bell to the break rang. I was approached by Michael. It seemed like he wasn't going to start a conversation, but for some reason, he just kept looking at me attentively, top down. "Well, what is it?" I finally asked. "You're not yourself today. Is it because of yesterday?" "Yesterday?" How does he know? "I mean the conversation in the cafe." "Oh, yeah, right, the cafe. No, it's not about that. Everything's fine, or will be, even if it isn't now." Without even turning her head, Catherine walked past us. I stared after her and must have made quite a face. "I see," Michael said disappointingly. Or dispassionately, I didn't quite catch it. "My bad." "What do you see?" I started to get worked up again. "Are all of you Americans like this?" "Like what?" "Like this, completely disregarding of other people, poking your noses in others' business, senseless, cold, and cruel." "I think you're talking about someone in particular right now." The gritting of my teeth must have been audible to the whole class. "You know what, Misha? Fuck you. Got it? Fuck you to hell. Last thing I need is your questions and observations. Don't meddle with other people's lives. Mind your own." I stood up, looking him up and down, but Michael didn't look aside. Then I pushed him away with my shoulder and left the class. Good God, what the hell was I doing? Just lashing out on one of the few people who still at least talked to me. Maybe he wanted to help. After all, Michael's no Kyosuke. The latter would immediately start to jump around, dolefully wringing his hands, and to what good would that make? Sometimes it really is better to take a cold-headed look at the situation from the side. I would definitely apologize before him, but later. At the moment, I just wanted to switch gears and get away from the class. To be alone, or at least with someone who wouldn't pry into my soul. With Himitsu, for example. Oh yeah, right, she wouldn't. Although if she were to see my present condition, Himitsu would probably understand. So... I feel like I've been ditching Himitsu a lot. I'm sure if I go to the roof, I'll run into one of the other two girls in this. But you know what? We've been ditching Himitsu a lot. Let's go to her for once. Who else if not her? Whom else can I rely on? I hesitated a while in front of the door. Of course, everyone in there knew me. But that's probably the reason why they also drew completely incorrect conclusions. Himitsu was sitting in her place, reading a journal of some kind. "Hi." "Nico-kun! Sorry about yesterday, It's okay. You're alright, aren't you?" Seemed to be still kicking. Himitsu gave me a questioning look. "I dropped by because... we've got it boring in our classroom. Kyosuke's still telling us stories about manga and anime. Nothing interesting besides that." "I'm glad you're here. And how are you doing?" There was absolutely nothing to talk about. "Seen Catherine already?" But that didn't mean I should have chosen the worst topic possible. However, Himitsu replied calmly. "Just briefly, in a corridor." "I see. And how is she?" "Don't you know?" "Me? How would I know if she doesn't talk to me? I mean, she does, but not about that." Himitsu's expression grew sad. "Can't make sense of her, like she's conducting some goddamn psychological experiment on me. Wanabe Young or something." I guess I was speaking much louder than would be appropriate. It distracted Himitsu's classmates, and they grew silent, staring at me. By that time, I was too fired up and wasn't realizing I looked stupid. "What you looking at? We've got these performances every day in my class. What, I don't look like a clown to you? Do I?" Some guy, one of those on the sturdier side, made a couple steps towards me and thought to reach with his hand. "Senpai, don't touch me," I said quietly, casting a cold look at him. "Nico-kun?" "Oh, her eyes are welling up. Now I feel like an asshole," Himitsu uttered, pain audible in her voice. "What?" "Oh," I shouted, and at that moment I felt inexpressibly disgusted, revolted by my behavior. Ashamed before these students, before Himitsu, before Michael, before myself. What have I turned into? Was it about that note, the calls, the threats? No, it was about me. I quickly left the class, my eyes cast down. The feet carried me away by themselves. I only stopped after I reached the school's old wing. But you can't flee from yourself. Of course, most of all, I wanted to run home, close the doors, turn off the phone, crawl under a blanket, and lay there for a week or so. Until the shame would be gone, until everyone would forget what I've done. But that's not how it worked. The planet really did keep circling no matter what I thought of it. And another weird thing, it wasn't circling around me. Michael might have resented me, some of Himitsu's classmates clearly thought I was an idiot, but all of that would already be forgotten by tomorrow. And I'd keep working myself up, convinced that absolutely everyone in the world was only occupied with thoughts about me. Would be hiding, remembering the stupid things I did, burning in shame over and over again. No, enough. I headed to the class in a resolute step. I'll start by apologizing before Michael. I was passing Himitsu's class and heard a familiar voice coming from there. It was Catherine. What's she doing there? The escapade I pulled a couple minutes ago was immediately forgotten. Now I was only interested in their conversation. Is he going to be crouching down by the door to hear them? Yes, he is. Okay, not crouched down, but still. I hid behind the door and listened carefully. Thank God for the thin walls of Japanese schools. It was also quite fortunate that Catherine occupied the desk closest to the door, even if it wasn't her class. That's the Catherine I knew. The students walking towards the corridor were giving me weird looks. No matter, it couldn't get any worse. Not what you think. I caught the end of a sentence. No, I'm just glad you're back. Are you now? Well, if you want to search for hidden implications in my every word, I'll leave you to it. That didn't really look like a conversation between old friends after a long separation. I could have expected that. No, actually, that was to be expected. Don't pretend nothing happened. But nothing really happened, and hasn't been happening for the past year and a half. And even if we were pretending, we were good at it. Mitsu wasn't talking very loudly, but suddenly went silent, gasping for air, as if after a desperate cry. Why now, of all times? If it was up to me, I would have never returned here. How convenient for you! You leave when you're most needed, and it's not your fault. You come back when you're not needed at all, and it's not your fault. And how are we to live now? Tell me. I totally did not expect a reaction like that from Himitsu. Well, sure, I'd known for a while that she was no longer the 8-year-old girl I met one day, when I still didn't know a single Japanese word. In many senses, she was more of an adult than me. But to see someone close to you like that, I guess I just wasn't ready. And what should I do? Tell me. Why in the world should I adjust myself to you, to him, to the two of you? For you, life is so simple. Well, it sure is complicated for you. You couldn't even come and say hi, explain the situation properly. And all because of your pride. Pride, you say? Catherine smirked scornfully. How do you know? You're not supposed to be... Maybe he's also looking through the window, but that would be so obvious. Dumbass. More like self-respect. You could use some yourself, acting like a... Like what? Come on, tell me. How am I acting? The way you couldn't? Ooh. It was weird that no one of Himitsu's classmates was paying attention to the two of them. This certainly didn't look like a friendly conversation. If only he knew the whole truth. Then tell me! I can't. Catherine said quietly. So quietly I almost couldn't hear her. Oh, so that's how it is. And what do you think to do next? You can't just ignore his feelings, can you? And what about my feelings? Has anyone thought about them? Her feelings? What? Catherine immediately continued. I can't stand being near him. Then don't be! Free us from your presence. It'll be easier for everyone. Don't worry, I will. There's less than a year of school left. Yes, but for the whole year, I'm sure you can endure it without breaking apart. You're just... Oh, senpai. One of Himitsu's classmates called out to me. Perfect timing. I immediately broke into a run. Hope the girls didn't notice me. I ran back to my class, almost knocking down two students who were too slow to dodge me. Jumped behind my desk and tried to quickly catch my breath. By then, I had completely forgotten about Michael. But what the ever-living hell was that? I could understand Himitsu worrying about me, about how Catherine's return might have affected me. But that tone, those wordings, and what about Catherine herself? I can't stand being near him? If only he knew the whole truth? Whatever happened between us, I didn't think I deserved this treatment through my words or actions. You alright, Nick? Yes, everything's fine. I pattered out. Kyosuke gave me a somehow sympathetic look and expressly glanced towards Michael, who was peacefully reading a book, paying no attention to his surroundings. Yeah. You know, a lot's happened. I really wanted him to understand. Yeah, but still. And here, Kyosuke was right. I very slowly stood up and approached Michael. So, nothing worthwhile would come to my head. Sorry I acted like that. It's just that I've been going through a complicated period recently. He closed the book and looked at me coldly. I understand. It's alright. No, I really didn't mean any harm. I just snapped. I'm telling you, I understand. Yeah, that was just like Michael. One thing in words and another in thoughts. Whatever. I certainly was in no mood to try to prove anything to him. The bell rang. I think I'm gonna leave this part here, just to keep you guys hanging. No, I'm not that evil, I promise. But there's certainly a lot going on that we don't know about, and I am very much looking forward to finding out what the hell is happening right now. There's way too many questions hanging in the air for my liking. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up, and think about subscribing to my channel and turning on notifications so you'll be notified whenever I put up a new video. Thank you guys, and I'll see you next time. Hope you have a good weekend.